Welcome and good afternoon. We are here on series number 2 to talk about application solutions today. My name is Melissa Melton. Please feel free to ask any questions through the chat box. And if you don't get a response throughout the slideshow presentation, we will be answering questions via email as well. All right, you should be seeing a copy of what your screen may have looked like in the beginning. In the upper portion of the screen, there may be a reconnect button. If at any time you lose audio connection or video connection or it freezes, feel free to hit that reconnect button. On the right-hand side of your screen, you will see 3 dots in a red box. That will show you a chat area. As I said, you have the capability of asking questions or just sharing, hey, hi, I'm here. And we will answer any questions, as I said, either during the presentation or afterwards. All right. As I said, my name is Melissa Melton. I thought this picture was appropriate since some of the applications we're talking about today are going to be cold and snowy. This is me and what it looks like to be in a cold and snowy job site. I do live in northern Michigan, which is, of course, where we do see a lot of winter conditions, but we do see it throughout the entire state. I have over 25 years of design experience as an inside sales, project management, to outside sales. I've been doing the last 9 years. So I do not only the sales engineering portion of it, but I also go out and assist in the field with any technical services like startups, troubleshooting, things like that. Who we are. So Dale Prentice Company, for those who aren't aware of, we are a Michigan-based company. We've been around for a long time. We deal with a lot of safety type products in a very technical atmosphere, and a lot of application engineering solutions, which is one of the things we're going to talk about today. As I said, we are a Michigan-based company, but we do actually have offices in Wisconsin as well as out west in the Rocky Mountain region as well. So we are very familiar with cold and snowy conditions. Some of the solutions that we're going to talk about today are going to be revolving around the heat trace, pipe, snow and ice melt and surface snow melt applications, as well as we'll touch on a few others. But we also offer a variety of solutions with regards to detection systems. We have medium high voltage, safety equipment, terminations, splices. We do a lot with overpressure protection, things like relief valves and rupture discs and explosion protection and vent systems, as well as our line of valve actuation controls products. So if there's anything in our solutions that we can assist you with, please get in touch with us. So this is the company that we represent. nVent is the corporate name. Raychem is the brand name that everyone is familiar with and has been around for 70 years, or since 1970s, excuse me. So in series number 1, if you were able to catch that segment, we talked a lot about the self-regulating heat trace technologies. So I'm not going to go too deep into it, but just know that we handle both a self-regulating type product as well as a MI, or a minerally insulated constant wattage output cable. And both of those cables have a place in our market. And so we, in talking about applications today, we're going to talk how we can use both types of technologies to assist and make the best solution for your customer. All right, so let's get right into application solutions. As I said in segment number 1, series number 1, we did talk a lot about heat trace that we put on the pipe. Those applications that you guys might see out in the field most commonly is going to be, of course, keeping those pipes from freezing. A lot of areas that they don't think about when it comes to freezing are valves or low spots like traps. Another one is whenever you're taking pressure and you're regulating it down, that whether it's gas or air or whatever it is, when you condense gases, it does tend to have a much higher capability of freezing. So that's another application that you guys might see out in the field. Flow maintenance. So anything from a greasy waste line to a fuel oil line, anytime you're trying to elevate pipe temperature, things that you guys might see out in the field that you don't think about, but you could make your customers aware of. Things like caustic is one that's I find commonly that they don't heat trace, and it really should be maintained at a higher temperature, typically 50 to 60 degrees. Otherwise, it starts to become very difficult to flow through your pumps. Another application that's fairly new is the NFPA 13 fire sprinkler protection systems. So we do offer heat trace that we can now solve those applications as well. When you're looking at applications, just know that we can do above ground piping, but we can also do buried piping. So if you have a drain line as an example, and it's going to go out to a sump area that's shallow, we can certainly do those types of applications. There is some considerations. And again, I did talk in more detail on series number 1 about that type of application. For fire sprinklers, as I mentioned, we are approved to do fire sprinkler systems to protect it from freezing. The typical applications that I would recommend solving with heat trace are smaller areas. So say you have a small garage area that's unheated, or in a freezer where you have the pendants dropping down in the freezer space. Those are all very good applications that we can help solve those issues. One thing just to note is we do need to have a controller that does monitoring. So you have that capability of providing an alarm back to the fire panel to meet code. So some of the other applications that we're going to get into today, roof and gutter, that's a big one that we see in Michigan. Surface snow melting, we'll talk about some of the applications out there that you guys may see on any job site, really, whether it's a commercial or industrial type project. And then we'll touch into some of our other floor heating applications and why you might need heat trace for different floors. We're not going to get too deep into this, but do know that we also offer a line of leak detection systems. So if you have an application, say it's a library or museum or data center, or even a fuel oil gas generator, we detect both water and fuel oils. So we have a lot of different solutions in that area as well. So as you come up to your project, to a building, you may just have one portion of the project, or maybe it's just a customer that you service and you do lighting fixtures or you do their plumbing work. So this seminar is really just to kind of make you think about where you might be able to solve other areas, solve other problems that you may not have considered in the past. So sidewalks, they're a big one from a liability standpoint, to roof melting, to simple, I'm going to keep your pipes from freezing on your HVAC water lines. So we'll touch base more on those applications. So this hopefully is not a picture that you're familiar with. Beating ice off of a building is not a proper technique. Unfortunately, it is something that is done on a regular basis, or steam cleaning them or shoveling, and there's a lot of liability in that. So this is just a good way to solve a customer's problem in a long-term way. So we do the heat trace cable, whether it's right on the roof, as you see on the left-hand side of the picture, where you can zigzag it on the roof. And it does okay. Its purpose is to keep water moving. So you do want to make sure that you keep water or keep the heat trace not only on the roof line, but in your gutters and in your downspouts all the way down to the surface where it's either going to refreeze safely or down into an underground sanitary system. That's very, very important. On the right-hand side, you'll see a newer product offering where we put our heat trace cable inside of an aluminum metal enclosed system that allows for protection of the cable as well as better efficiency, and it's better aesthetics. So people who don't want to see the heat trace zigzagged on their roof, we now have a really good approach for that. One thing to note with nVent Raychem products, we do offer the highest output rating as well as our the highest extended warranty process. With the cables, just putting the heat trace, the ice-stop heat trace cables in applications, and once it's been tested and applied for, we'll give the 10-year extended warranty validated. But when you're putting it inside of the rim, the metal enclosed systems, they have now extended that up to 20-year warranty. So it's the best in the industry, and it's because it is protected in that aluminum enclosure, and we of course still have to validate and make sure the testing's been done to be compliant. So these are some of the areas that we can solve problems. So when you come up to a building, you may have a valley area as an example. You may have a roof edge. You may have an entire metal area that is just got a lot of ice buildup. So you want to make sure, you know, we're solving the problem that is needed. And we have a lot of different components to be able to do that. This CCB metal channel is one really nice product that we use in gutters where you have maybe a little bit wider gutter area and you want to solve the melting and you don't want to put 2 runs of cable in it. Sometimes we can design with that CCB cable or cover bracket and 1 single run of cable. So those are good applications where we can help melt much wider pathways. So any building's going to have things like windows or, as I said, valleys are a big one, chimneys, a lot of different things that cause ice to build up. And that's where we can really come in and help you solve customers' issues appropriately. One type of building that I get asked about quite often is anytime you are talking about a building like a historical preservation application, when you have those, give us a call and let us know. We can, again, solve so many different areas with the heat trace product and still use a concealing method so you can still comply with that historical preservation. So you're not seeing a bunch of cable on the roof, but you are solving the ice damming effect that can happen on some of those older buildings. This is a project that we did, and the reason I noted is, you know, we don't have solutions for every single design out there, but if you come to us and you have a concern, and we go to our factory engineering support, and we'll design something that meets and complies with the owner and the project needs. In this particular case, we designed a metal enclosed system that we're basically melting every other roof panel throughout the edges of these buildings. So your visibility is not going to be seen at the ground level, and it does a really fabulous job of keeping that that water from building up ice on those edges of the eaves. We've also done a lot of unique applications. So when we're talking about, you know, gutter heat trace, we're just trying to melt water in a trickle. We're just trying to keep that water flowing. In this particular design, you've got a lot of water mass that's trickling down from the upper tier down to the middle tier and then down to the lower tier. And you can see by this gutter width, it's a much, much wider pan. So what we were asked to design on that particular project was really for us to snow melt it, to melt a much wider pathway, to not allow any ice and snow formation to remain because of the amount of water. So we actually designed this for 55 watts square foot with the MI cable system. We also have copper MI cable. We also have copper in the metal enclosed rim systems. But this is just one application where they were concerned about snow loads. This is a very good, effective way to melt the snow when you're concerned about an extensive amount of snow accumulating. So just some unique applications. Window mullions and window edges, that's another very unique application. We've done a few different projects now. Each project has its own variations. So there's not one way that we do it. It seems like it's dependent on the project and the building. With this Eli and Edith Broad Art Museum, which is down in the Lansing area, you can see these windows are massive. They slant on these edges. This museum is a very cool building if you ever get a chance to get down there. But they were really concerned about that condensation building up on the windows. And in art museums or libraries, they keep the temperatures elevated in those types of atmospheres. And when that happens, it does become a challenge to keep the windows free and clear from condensation buildup. So we were able to design a system where we put a higher output heat trace inside of each window mullion edge and continue to heat that when it's calling for it. All right, typical snow melt applications. You guys, I'm sure, have seen lots and lots of snow accumulations on sidewalks, ramps, stairs. You know, so how do you know when it's a good idea to create a snow melt system? Probably the number one reason I see owners requiring it is because of potential liabilities. Slip and fall liabilities are one of the number one, excuse me, one of the number one reasons why people actually call in to work, call in sick or otherwise hurt. It's actually something like 82% of them are due to a slip and fall type instances. Aesthetics, that's another one. When you have a building and they're throwing out the salt or the chemicals, it really does erode the concrete. It also makes havoc on your interior entrances, as well as, you know, it drags into your building and unfortunately causes a lot further damage. So those are typically reasons why your building may need a snow melting system. Some of the typical applications that you're going to see out there, stairs, of course, ramps, any entryway, loading docks. We do loading docks a couple different ways, but we can simply do a loading dock with what we call tracks. So we simply melt a pathway that's wide enough for the tire tracks in order for them to be able to pull out safely from the loading dock. But we can do an entire loading dock entry if they're concerned about the snow buildup. Typical areas, buildings that you're going to see this request, hospitals, those are huge, of course. Ambulance entrances, those are huge, of course, high critical areas. But really any, you know, medical office building or lawyer's building or any big commercial where you have a lot of people walking in and out, you want to consider making a good solution for the customer that they're not going to be concerned about the liability aspect. So I had mentioned we do self-regulating heat trace solutions as well as MI, or minimally insulated solutions. This is one of the areas that we offer both products, and it really goes down to your voltage application, your square foot area. How big is the square foot area? Do you have a bunch of small entrances? That might be a better electromelt application. Or do you have one really big 1,500 square foot pad entrance? That might be a better application for MI cable. So we look at all those things, and we can give options and variations to the best for that particular product or project, excuse me. People always ask me, what's the longevity of your product? Of course, with any product, you're going to have wear and tear. It depends on how it's treated. It depends on how it's installed and things like that. But we typically like to say that, our cables are built to last 20 plus years. This Thoroughly Automotive project just happens to be one that is in our neighborhood here, and it's 30, actually it's going on 35 plus years now, and it's still working today. Well, not physically today, it's July, but this winter. The lower one is just a unique project that we do sidewalks all the time, but whenever you have an elevated situation, we do have to design for that a little bit differently. You have a lot more losses on the air below the elevated bridge than you would when the sidewalk is simply on the ground level. So those are things to consider, but there's something certainly that we can help solve. As I said, stairs are a big one. This is also one that we can do in both self-regulating and MI. One thing I will note is that we do a really good job with our electric systems versus if you're considering a hydronic system. Electric systems tend to be able to be closer to the nose of the stairs when it's laid out, when it's physically installed, which does create a much warmer path where people are walking. So you do want to make sure that your cable, whether it's hydronic or electric, is installed very close to that edge of the nose. We have a 2 inches is our guide mark to make that effective. We also do some unique things. So not just in concrete, but we can also do it under pavers. Pavers do tend to be a little bit trickier because you have a lot more heat losses. We just need to make sure we design accordingly for that. You can put the cables either in a substrate in a concrete base, or in a sand, or even in a mortar, excuse me, in a mortar base. So when people come to me with projects, we actually do a hydronic type system as well as our electric systems. And I really do look at all avenues. This particular project, we considered both hydronic and electric, and really there was a lot of environmental considerations on this one, as well as area to put a boiler, and do they want to see the boiler stack. Those types of things are all considered, and we did develop a proposal doing it both ways, but this really was a more effective MI electric snow melting solution. So, and I say size does matter, because in smaller areas, MI cable may not be the right choice. Electromelt self-regulating cable might be the better choice. So we look at all those things to develop a good solution for the application. And as I said, elevated slabs, this just happens to be a helipad application, but the same principle. We need to look at what the solution is and the design to make sure we're providing enough heat where it needs to go, and not allow it to go down and be lost into the air. So as you're walking around to different buildings and seeing different customers, keep in mind, where you might be able to solve their issues. Again, liability is a big factor. In the upper right-hand corner, we just happened to be on vacation in the UP and happened to be walking into a Pizza Hut. And it's hard to tell in this picture, but this ice section above the roof line, I mean, it was hanging over. It was probably 2 feet thick. Liability is just waiting to happen. So just consider that as you're going to your job sites where you might be able to sell services that you didn't think about before. All right, so we're going to change gears a minute. We're going to talk about domestic hot water. So in most applications, domestic hot water is done with a water heater and a pump, and you circulate the water around a building. Just know that we have a solution that provides, by using heat trace, that provides a consistent and a manageable temperature all the way to the end point without having to recirculate it. So we are eliminating all the return piping, all the circ pumps, the balancing, which is usually problematic when you get into the high-rise building applications. So just keep that in mind. We do have solutions that can potentially eliminate some of those risks. We also are saving a lot of energy in doing it as well, which is very unique. So some of the applications that you guys might see as you're going through your building projects is things like hospitals and nursing homes, schools, hotels are a big one because of the high rise especially, or even in any kitchen or laundry facilities. So we can do anything from a lower temperature application to a little bit higher temperature application. And we manage it through a control system, but keep in mind, we do have a lot of applications that we can help solve. It's a very simple thing, just like we do for pipe heat trace. It's a specific cable called HWAT. In terms of operational, these are some of the things that can help the building owner. They get that immediate hot water, so they're not running a bunch of water. If they're in a big city, water metering is quite expensive to sit there and lose a bunch of water down your drain as you're waiting for that hot water to get to you. And that also goes to environmental concerns. And we actually do have the capability of providing lead points. So if you're on a project that they're looking to optimize a few of the areas and you think about the amount of hot water that's being potentially lost down the drain, we can help solve that and help with the lead point generation if that's something that's required. Now, in a lot of applications, you may have a problem, but the building is already there. It's already circulating water, and that's fine. But maybe they did an expansion and they built a wing off of the existing building, and it's a 100-foot wing, and they can't quite get the hot water to the tenants that are down that wing. So this is what we call a hybrid approach, where maybe we're just providing heat trace for the branch lines that allow for that hot water to get down to that very last fixture, even if all of the tenants aren't running water. So it's a great solution for you to think about in a lot of different buildings, really. And as I said, we do like to optimize, and this is an area where you can consider upselling, because we can control it very, very effectively, whether we're using our HWAT Eco controller that programs it with scheduling and different algorithms built into it to make sure it's being efficient, all the way up to the C910 controller, which provides a lot of alarm points, to the Access 30 system, which allows a lot of multiple applications all to be put into one control unit. So this is one area that we could help you give advantages to your customers' needs. All right, let's talk about floor heating a minute. Floor heating, so we can do anything from a comfort to a radiant space heating. Foyers and lobbies are probably one of the biggest ones. So if you walk into a building and the room is cold or the floor is cold and it's a space that's typically broken up before the main entry, that's a great application for electric heat trace in the flooring. But we also do other things like bathrooms or kitchen areas. So we have a lot of different solutions, a lot of different applications. If you have an unheated space like a car garage underneath a raised roof or raised room, that's also another great application to keep that heat loss from that room. And this is another one where we can both do self-regulating, RACEL, or we can do MI cable. And again, it goes to the size of the product, what voltage, all those things we consider which product is the best application. If you're doing any commercial buildings like freezer floors for beverage companies or food companies, this is another way that you could help solve. Freezer floors over time can get built up temperature into the ground, and what happens is it heaves the concrete. When you heave the concrete, not only are you damaging the floor, but you can also be damaging the ability for that freezer to keep its temperature. Or in the doorway. Door sweeps are another big application that we see for freezers where we can help solve problems. And we simply put runs of cable into the underflooring system underneath the insulation, and we keep that frost from driving down. All right, so lastly, how can you upsell? You have a lot of different areas in a building, in a project that you can help solve, whether it's pipe freeze, protection, roof and gutter. We talked about the surface snow melting, of course, hot water temperature maintenance, floor heating, or even the freezer frost. In some buildings, they want smart controls. They want to be able to know what's going on. We have the capability of that with a lot of different control products. This one's just a single point unit, but it does offer things like communications to BMS if they want to get an alarm contact or they want to see what's going on with the system, monitoring it. To let's make this simple for a customer and let's build one panel, one controller that does a whole snow melt system as an example. So we can build and customize power distribution and control panels. Energy savings. So whenever we're talking about snow applications, we can use our sensing sensors like the APS 4C controller with the aerial sensor or the gutter sensors, and only turn the system on when it's snowing and when it's cold out. So we can optimize and make a good energy efficient system for your customers. And then, as I mentioned before, if you have multiple applications, this is a great way to centralize one control point, one monitor that the customer has to go to, and he can have several different applications all built into one system. So now we went through a lot of application solutions today. I hope some of it was helpful for you to think about when you're going to your next building and where you might be able to sell your services or upsell if you're already working there. Next series is going to be on design strategy and also what are some of our design tools. So we'll be going through, we have a lot of online tools that are available, and we'll be going through those and talking about the features and benefits and giving a little bit of tutorial. Again, it's just going to be a 30-minute series, so we're not going to go into too technical, but it's just to give you guys an idea of what capabilities you have if you wanted to sign up for those design tools. Thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate your time. I have gone a few minutes over. I did have a question. Would a fire sprinkler heat trace require a backup generator for emergency power? So real quick, the answer to that is really based on local code jurisdiction. That's not something that is a general requirement for NFPA. So that's generally it's a local code would dictate that. However, I do find more often than not that is the case, that they would like to have the fire sprinkler protected if there was a power outage occurring. So that's generally what I see. Other than that, if you have any other questions, as I said, please feel free to put a comment on the chat box, or feel free to email me directly. My email address is mmelton@prenticeco.com. And I appreciate your time. I hope you had a great lunch break, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.